Hi, thanks for tuning in today. If you've ever read the Old Testament, which I'm sure you have, one of the things that you immediately notice is how many different gods that people worshiped in ancient times. Now, if we distilled all of those gods down, and there were hundreds of them, three of the most prominent gods that people worshiped were Baal, Molech, and Ashtoreth, also referred to sometimes as Ishtar. It seems like there was a god for everything in ancient times. And throughout the Old Testament, one of the things that you see is that the people of Israel were constantly being tempted to forsake the true and the living God, Yahweh, to serve these other false gods that were very popular in the culture of their day. Now, if we think that the presence of those gods was only confined to that time period, the Old Testament, then we would be wrong. Because whether you realize it or not, we are facing the same gods, or demonic spirits is what they really are, once again in our culture today. You see, our culture still worships many of the same gods that people worshipped in the Old Testament. The problem is, we don't call them by the same name, and they're much more difficult to identify because they manifest themselves in a different form to us today. So we often miss these gods, better defined as demonic spirits, that are still operating amongst us, leading people and leading our culture into darkness. Now, what's interesting is, historically, something very unique happened when Jesus came to earth. He died, he rose again, and he established his church. Many of the gods that held power in the Roman Empire, which, by the way, pretty much encompassed the entirety of the known world at that time, all right? Those gods lost their power as Christianity grew. In other words, as the message of Jesus and the power of Jesus began to spread throughout the world, saturating the Roman culture and empire, these gods, these ancient gods, literally lost their hold over people. They lost their power. They lost their position of prominence in the society. People stopped worshiping them. They stopped talking about them. New social norms and biblical moralities began to take root in the culture. And these demonic gods got literally relegated to the sidelines for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. But as people in America and around the world began to turn away from God over the past few decades in full force, really since the 1960s we've seen this happen, the ancient gods have been allowed to reemerge in full force. But most of us are unaware of it. So I want to just point out a couple of things to you today about these ancient gods. The first one I want to talk about is Baal. And some pronounce it Baal, some pronounce it Baal. Baal's sign or image is interesting. It's the bull. Now, what is the first image that you think of when you think of a bull? I think of Wall Street. Why? Because Baal was the god who represented economic circles. He was the king of the gods. He ruled over the weather, fertility, and the crops, everything that had to do with the economy, especially in a farming culture. Today, although not called by his ancient name, Baal, he is still worshipped in America. How do we know that? Because today Americans worship at the altar of power and money. That's what the ancients did. That's what Baal worship was all about. And worship of power and money has become the driving force in America, regardless of who gets hurt or what the cost is, right? So Baal is in operation. He's operating in our economic system, in our culture today in a big time way. Now, second god I want to talk about is Baal's wife, whose name was Ashtoreth. She goes by many different names throughout history, but here's what you need to know about Ashtoreth. She was responsible for sexualizing everything in ancient cultures. She made a mockery of sexuality and intimacy, specifically between a man and a woman. In fact, Ashtoreth was known to switch from male to female. Ashtoreth promoted homosexuality and transgenderism in ancient cultures. And that's exactly what we've seen the rise of in America over the past 50 years. We've seen the sexualization of America. What's behind that? The goddess Ashtoreth, all right? Third god that I want to talk to you about is the god of Molech. And Molech is the god that the ancients sacrificed their children to, of which Israel, unfortunately, was guilty of at times. So where does Molech come into play in America today? Well, we see Molech in the attack against unborn children, abortion. Every year in America, over 1 million children are aborted. Fetuses are aborted. We've also seen an attack against children by questioning their identities and their belief systems. Where does all this come from? Well, the ancient god, demonic god, spirit that's behind all this is Molech. We don't call him Moloch today, but it's Molech. There has been countless campaigns now to indoctrinate our children with lies and misinformation through education and media about sexuality, about history, about all kinds of stuff. Molech is behind all that. So my point is this: I want to make you aware that the same gods that ancient Israel dealt with in the Old Testament are now alive and well once again today in America. For hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, the presence of the Church of Jesus Christ kept these gods at bay, kept them sidelined. But as the church has grown weak and society has deliberately chosen to reject God, it's opened the doors to invite them to return to America in full force. Now, again, most of us don't recognize these gods because they're not called by their ancient names. But I want you to know that they're alive and well, and they're destroying countless lives, and they're destroying our nation. So what does that mean for us? It's important for us, the church, you and I, to rise up and stand against these gods in the power of the Holy Spirit by speaking truth and declaring that Jesus is Lord and not backing down. Well, I hope you will join us this Sunday. We're going to be celebrating Mother's Day. We've got some special stuff in store for mothers. It's going to be a great day. And hey, as always, thanks for joining me today. I hope this has been helpful. Have a great day. See you on Sunday.